Hello and welcome to the International News Daily Podcast. I'm your host, Dennis Dunicic. Now, before we begin today, I want to remind you to subscribe to our channel. My goal here is not to just give you news on a daily basis on what's happening in our world. It is to create a community amongst all of you where we can discuss what's happening, discuss our different opinions, and have an open conversation about everything that's going on. And I want to build a community with people all over the world. And now that we're talking about community, I want to address a few comments from my video yesterday, which was concerning Ethiopia. And we're also going to address that issue today. We're going to give a final update on this week's situation in Ethiopia, but I want to respond to a couple comments that were made to yesterday's video, where I stated that it is in Abiy Ahmed's interest to sit down and have peace talks with the TPLF. And I know that during my video, I came off as strongly being a supporter of the Tigray Forces, the Tigrayan people, the TPLF, and the coalition that has now been formed today, the Ethiopian Federalist, or the United Front of Ethiopian Federalists. Now, I want to make it clear that I really do make an effort to try and be objective. And I'm going to openly recognize that yesterday I sounded very subjectively on their side. And guess what? That's because I am. And look, I want to make it clear that my opinion is not the only one. A lot of Ethiopians, a lot of people in Ethiopia, a lot of people following this issue disagree with me, and that's perfectly fine, okay? What's not fine are the war crimes committed by both sides in the region that are going on. But I'm glad that instead of taking out our problems with a war, we can do it in a conversation. Now, the specific comment that I want to address is from Rodas Abebe, who stated the history of the TPLF, which I have not gone over extensively. And Rodas, thank you for pointing that out. The TPLF is not perfect. They ruled Ethiopia for 27 years. And as Rodas pointed out, in that 27-year period, they divided Ethiopia regionally into different ethnic groups, which did cause ethnic tensions to rise. And I should make it clear, and I did go over this in in our first video regarding Ethiopia, which you can find in our Africa playlist. The main political difference between the TPLF and its allies and Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed and his Prosperity Party is the idea of the Prosperity Party. Abiy Ahmed created this Prosperity Party to be one political party to unify all of the different political groups in Ethiopia. Now understand that by political party or political groups in Ethiopia, what that typically means is ethnic groups. Abiy Ahmed wanted to create one party to encompass all of the ethnicities of Ethiopia and stop working for ethnic interests, but begin working for Ethiopian federal national interests. Then this is an honorable goal. It's not something that Abiy should be criticized for. And Rodas, I do want to point out, as I've said before, Abiy Ahmed is a Nobel Peace Prize winner. And that's one of the things that contributed to his Nobel Peace Prize, trying to bring the people of Ethiopia together. Ethiopia historically, when it has been unified, has been great, has been strong, has been a major nation. When it has been divided amongst ethnic lines, it has suffered. That is a fact. Under the TPLF for 27 years, Ethiopia did not make a lot of strides. Democratically speaking, politically speaking, socially speaking, and economically speaking, there was not a lot of progress made. And when Abiy Ahmed took over Ethiopia in 2018, a lot of reforms that he made led towards the democratization and progress of Ethiopia, making the political arena more public and even allowing opponents to come back to the country, opponents who were previously in exile. And that's a point that I want to give Rodas' side of the story. But the reality is sometimes certain nations have ethnic divides that are so big that they will eventually explode. And the reality is sometimes it's better to be an ethnic realist and accept these lines, accept that they exist, give these different regions, these ethnic areas, their own space, their own ability, while still working as one federal country. And that is what I believe the TPLF, at least publicly, from its statements, intends to do with its Ethiopian Federalist alliance or coalition. It's a military and political coalition. We'll go into that during our report. And now, the final comment that I want to just address today came from the Political Hawk, which stated two things. One, that I'm just like the rest of the mainstream media. Again, I don't really know what that means, mainstream media. I guess the definition is very subjective, right? And that I am extremely pro-United States. Now, you may have noticed by my accent and the way that I talk and the fact that I wear a lumberjack shirt sometimes that I'm probably an American. You guessed right. I am a U.S. citizen. That is absolutely a fact. Am I pro-United States? No, I'm not anti-American either. As I stated in my comment, I am pro-people, and what the goal of this podcast is to just explain what the fuck is going on in our extremely complex, confusing, and dynamic world. That's my purpose, and I try to give both sides of the story. Yes, I take sides, but I do think that rarely, if you look at my videos, and I encourage all of you to go back and watch all of my videos, just every single one, watch it multiple times. If you do that, you will see that when it comes to the United States, I've actually tried to maintain an extreme amount of objectivity, and a special amount of objectivity. And I actually don't even really report on the United States that much, and there is a good reason. Because I'm American. And I think that the news and the mainstream media, as the Political Hawk stated, yes, the MSM exists. That's the mainstream that we consume. Focuses too much on the United States. I wanted to bring attention to issues in countries where less people are paying attention to, like Afghanistan, which only had attention while the United States was leaving. No one gave a shit what happened after they left. Countries like Myanmar, countries like Ethiopia, countries like Sudan, issues that matter and affect hundreds of millions, if not billions of people around the world, but don't get as much attention from the Western or even Eastern mainstream media. So I'm not offended. Please, give all of your comments. I like people that disagree with me. That is not a problem. But don't disagree with me in that way, okay? What we're doing here is bringing attention to issues that typically are underreported on. And again, I'm not pro-United States. I'm not anti-American. But, if I ever do become pro-US, I will paint Uncle Sam right behind me and I'll have a Coors Light during every single podcast. But thank you again, Political Hawk, for your insightful comment. I definitely respect your opinion. Now, moving on to our last report of the week, we're going to cover Ethiopia one more time. And the reason why is because the situation is changing on a day-by-day basis. And anything can dynamically change. And finally, this is an issue that has begun to get a lot of international attention. And I also wanted to comment on it one last time because it's been generating a lot of interest. I'm involved in a lot of Ethiopian groups online, and I think you guys have a wonderful, really fascinating, complex country. And what's happening there right now is very sad. As I stated in my response to Rodas's comment, this issue began as a political one. A disagreement of unifying Ethiopia under one political party, the Prosperity Party. The TPLF would hold its own elections in its region, which would initiate a response from Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed to send Ethiopian forces to the Tigrayan border. The TPLF had no choice but to respond militarily and attack these forces on their border. And what resulted of this was a 1-year-long war, which has had war crimes, alleged war crimes, but it's pretty goddamn clear that war crimes have been going on from both sides of this conflict, human rights abuses, and just a major human rights crisis. And following the United Nations Human Rights Report, the international community has been putting a lot of pressure on both sides to just sit down and talk and have a temporary ceasefire. Now, today, the TPLF announced that alongside its biggest ally, the Oromo Liberation Army, that it had formed a military and political coalition to remove Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed. Now, this coalition coalition consists of the TPLF, the Tigray Forces, the Oromo Liberation Army, and 7 other political and military groups who have all been against the Prosperity Party. And their goal is to remove Abiy. Now, the biggest issue militarily from the TPLF side that is going on is the Oromo Liberation Army has began a march towards Addis Ababa. The TPLF, which is marching through Amhara, is also following suit. The capital city of Addis Ababa is under a very large threat to be attacked by TPLF, Oromo, and the United Ethiopian Federalist Forces. And that could cause a major human rights crisis. Addis Ababa is the capital city of Ethiopia. A lot of people live there. A lot of women, children, innocent people, civilians live there, and they could be killed in the crossfire. Though I'm sure that wouldn't bother Prime Minister Ahmed that much. He has called for his civilians to take up arms against the TPLF. Normal civilians, just go fight the TPLF, which, by the way, historically has been one of the most aggressive, brutal, and successful military forces in Ethiopia's history. So, smart move there. Now, Abiy Ahmed has publicly stated that this coalition is just a publicity stunt, and that the vast majority of members of this coalition are factions or groups that don't have any real traction or relevance. In addition to this, he stated that life in Addis Ababa is moving on as normal, and that there is no threat of an attack on the capital. But that is inconsistent and contradictory. Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed has declared a state of emergency, with the main reason being a potential attack on the capital of Addis Ababa. And with this state of emergency, that has given his government a sweeping amount of powers, which they have used to arrest thousands of Tigrayans. And again, I do believe that Abiy Ahmed is not doing this because he's a monster. Again, this man is a Nobel Peace Prize winner. He's doing this because he believes that these Tigrayans could potentially support the TPLF when Addis Ababa is attacked. And look, if ceasefire talks are not had, Addis Ababa, there's a really good chance that there will be a siege on the capital city. And this war could turn into a horrible, horrible war of attrition. In just 1 year, thousands of people have died and millions have been displaced. If this war goes into a stalemate where the capital is being sieged, things will only get worse. And that is why United States Secretary of State Anthony Blinken has called on both sides to stop, to make an immediate ceasefire. More specifically, he has called upon the Oromo Liberation Army and the TPLF to stop its advance towards Addis Ababa. And he has called on the Ethiopian government to stop its military actions. And more specifically, the airstrikes that are going on in Tigray and the mobilization of different ethnic militaries. And that is also a huge problem. This conflict, which was a political issue, is very quickly turning into an ethnic one. And as I've stated before, ethnic issues are much dirtier, they're much more horrifying, and just more war crimes, more human rights violations occur during these kinds of conflicts. Now, the United States has sent a special envoy to Ethiopia, Jeffrey Feltman, who is an experienced career diplomat who originally began his career in Hungary, but has served in many diplomatic positions in a lot of complicated countries in the Horn of Africa. And he is now the special envoy to the Horn of Africa, and he's just trying to stop this conflict from happening. It is in American interest that Ethiopia is not having a major crisis. Ethiopia is an important country for the United States. It can be potentially a really good implementation partner because it's the second most populated country in Africa. It's on the Horn of Africa, so it's right across the Arab Gulf. There are a lot of resources in the nation, and it's good to just have friends in all places, especially in a day and age where China has began to build a lot more partnerships in Africa. So it's good to have a balance of power. That's why the United States is invested in kind of building peace. But the U.S. has not taken any sides here. They have not given more support to the government or more support to the TPLF. But the TPLF and the alliance, the Ethiopian Federalists, the coalition that was created today, seem to be more receptive. Now, Feldman has had talks with senior government officials, including the Minister of Defense and the Minister of Finance on the Ethiopian government side. But he has yet to meet with Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, who is the final word and the necessary key to ending this conflict. Now, the Ethiopian Federalist, the new coalition, have stated that their goal is to remove Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed to create a transitionary period. They want to create a period where there can be a transition in Ethiopia. More specifically, where Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed is removed from his position, a interim government is put in place, and that a new transition to democracy is recreated. Now, this would probably look something similar to the TPLF government that ruled Ethiopia for 27 years, which I stated earlier was not the best. There wasn't a lot of progress. But I do think that today, with these kinds of different ethnic alliances, maybe eventually some kind of progress can be made, at least towards the process of democratization. Now, Abiy Ahmed, just like any politician, is going to do whatever he can to avoid leaving his position of power. That's just a reality. You know, every politician wants to maintain the power that they have. And he's going to continue pushing this message of prosperity and this message of unity. But that message in the last year has become extremely muddled, with Ethiopian government forces now going around arresting ethnic Tigrayans, with a major human rights crisis occurring in the Tigrayan region, where there has been a blockade by the Ethiopian army and the Eritrean, its allied Eritrean forces. People are starving in Tigray, as I mentioned in our previous episodes, and just the general death caused by this conflict, which is unnecessary. This political conflict could have been solved, but it's already reached a level where it's getting ethnic, and there needs to be peace soon. I don't think that Abiy Ahmed is going to willingly leave power. I don't think that the Ethiopian Federalists are going to stop making the demand that Abiy removes himself from power. They've stated they will either accept a peaceful transition where he just leaves, or they will remove him by force. So this conflict is only going to increase in its volume. Now, there is a lot of pressure, especially from the United States, which historically has been a huge diplomatic partner. But it seems that both sides are very confident in themselves. With the Ethiopian Federalists, with this new United Federalist movement by the TPLF, Oromo Alliance, Oromo Liberation Army, and the different ethnic and political and military groups that have joined it, they've even stated that their second goal is to now begin creating diplomatic relations with international actors in Ethiopia, which is very political. And that's high government level shit right there. That's not something you expect from a random militia group. These people have a clear political plan, and they are very confident that they will be the new government of Ethiopia. And they are already beginning to start to form new diplomatic ties, which is going to be interesting. It's going to make the conflict in Ethiopia one of international bargaining. Who picks what side and how things are going to go? Hopefully, the international community in every country keeps pushing for just a ceasefire and peace, and this doesn't become some kind of proxy war. Now, that most likely will not happen. But as I've stated before, the Prime Minister is not going to leave his position. He's made that very clear. But it is good that high-level government ministers are speaking with the U.S. Special Envoy there. It shows that mediation could eventually be possible. But the Tigrayan forces and their alliance probably will not accept anything that doesn't involve Abiy leaving office. This situation is going to be significantly more difficult to solve. Now, I hope that whatever happens, a ceasefire, at least a ceasefire, doesn't have to be complete peace, occurs. And, to be honest, I'm not Ethiopian, and I don't know what's best for that country. And if you're from Ethiopia, and Rodas, I can tell by your name that you are, I don't know what's best for your country. So I really don't care if this conflict ends with Abiy Ahmed still in power. Again, he has a complicated history, but still a Nobel Peace Prize winner, and has done a lot to unify and move Ethiopia forward. I don't mind if the TPLF comes back into power. They had a stagnant government, not a lot of progress was made, but they seem to be different and have different leadership now. And they didn't do horrible things while they were in power. So at the end of the day, the only thing I want, and I want to make my stance here very clear, is for this war to stop, and for the suffering to stop, and for the innocent people who don't give a shit about what their government looks like and just want to live their lives. I want them to go back to living a relatively normal and decent life, and for the progress of Ethiopia to continue. These people shouldn't be under a military blockade. No one should be starving to death. Everyone should have the basic necessities that they need. So my only stance, because I do think that I've kind of confused people here, is that I just want peace. But let me know what you think. I'm happy that yesterday I finally had some people disagreeing with me in the comments, and I'm happy we were able to have a really good discussion. Comment again. Comment what you think, and I'm going to see you guys next week. Thanks for tuning in.